You think being nice is keeping you safe. It isn't. It's keeping you invisible. Right now, somewhere in your life, someone is using your kindness against you. Someone is walking over you because you let them. Someone is ignoring you because you trained them to. And the worst part? You called it being a good person. You called it being respectful. But here's the truth nobody warned you about: the world doesn't reward good people. The world rewards powerful people. And those two things are not the same. This comes from Machiavelli's The Prince and Modern Psychology. And what you're about to hear will either make you angry or wake you up. There is no middle ground. We're going to go through 7 principles of silent power. The kind of power that doesn't need words. The kind that makes people respect you before you even open your mouth. The kind that makes rooms shift when you walk in. Not because you're loud, but because you're dangerous in a way they can't explain. Stay with this. Every principle gets darker. Every one gets more important. And by the end, the way you see people, respect, and control will never be the same again. Principle 1. You are being read right now. And you are failing. Every single person around you is reading you constantly. Not your words. Your behavior. Your patterns. The way you react. The way you chase. The way you flinch. They are making decisions about you based on what you show them, not what you think you're showing them. What you actually show. Machiavelli wrote that a prince is judged by what he appears to be, not what he is. And that has never been more true than right now, in your daily life, in your relationships, in every room you enter. Here's the psychological truth. People don't respond to your intention. They respond to your signal. You can mean well. You can be loyal, honest, hardworking. But if your signal says, "I need your approval," that's the only message they receive. And once someone knows you need their approval, they own you. Not because they're evil. Because that is simply how human nature works. Think about someone at work who is always eager to please. Always agreeing. Always available. Now think about how people treat that person. Not with respect. With casual disregard. Because they learned that person costs nothing to ignore. The strategic rule is this. Control what you signal before you try to control anything else. Because right now, you may be handing people a map to your weakness without saying a single word. And this is where most people destroy themselves. They believe their intention protects them. It doesn't. Perception is the only thing that matters. Principle 2. Predictability is the slowest form of defeat. When people can predict you, they can manage you. And when they can manage you, they will never truly respect you. Machiavelli warned that a leader who becomes too predictable becomes weak. Not because of what they do, but because others no longer have to think about them. They are already calculated. Already handled. Already boxed in. The psychology behind this is uncomfortable. Human beings are wired to pay attention to what they cannot fully understand. Unpredictability triggers something primal. It forces attention. It creates a low level of tension that keeps people watching. Not because you're performing. Because they genuinely don't know what comes next. Think about the most powerful person you know. Do they always respond immediately? Do they always agree? Do they always explain themselves? No. And that silence, that space, that quiet refusal to be fully readable, that's not mystery for its own sake. That is power protecting itself. The strategic rule. Never let anyone completely predict your next move. Not in work. Not in relationships. Not in conflict. The moment you become fully readable, you become fully controllable. But here's the part nobody talks about. Most people become predictable not because they are weak, but because they're afraid of being misunderstood. They over-explain. They over-justify. They fill every silence with words because silence feels dangerous. And in doing that, they hand over every piece of leverage they ever had. Principle 3. Your emotions are someone else's weapon. This one is going to hit differently. Because most people believe their feelings are private. They're not. Every time you react emotionally in front of someone, you show them a button. And once they know a button exists, they will press it. Not necessarily to hurt you. Sometimes just to see what happens. Sometimes to win an argument. Sometimes just to feel a small sense of control. People use emotional buttons constantly. And most people hand them out for free. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn to control his nature. That a man ruled by his emotions is a man ruled by others. That is not philosophy. That is biology. Because when you react emotionally, your prefrontal cortex, the thinking, calculating part of your brain, literally shuts down. You stop thinking. You start reacting. And when you're reacting, someone else is thinking. And someone else thinking while you're not. That is the definition of losing. Here is a real-life example. Two people get into a conflict. One person gets visibly angry. The other stays completely calm. Who looks powerful? The calm one. Always. Not because calm is peaceful, but because calm means you cannot shake me. And people do not disrespect what they cannot shake. The strategic rule. Power rewards emotional control. Every time you hold your reaction, you hold your power. Every time you leak your emotion in public, you pay a price you don't even notice you're paying. This is where it gets dangerous. Because emotional control isn't just about staying calm. It's about understanding that your reaction is a resource. And every uncontrolled reaction is a resource you gave away for free. Type, I control my reactions, below if this hits something real. Principle 4. Goodness without limits is an invitation. This is the principle that will make some people uncomfortable. Good. Stay with it. You were taught that being kind is always strength. That giving is always noble. That being there for people is always rewarded. And in an ideal world, that would be true. But you are not living in an ideal world. You are living in a world where people are watching what they can take, not what they should give. Machiavelli was direct about this. He wrote that a man who wants to be completely good in every way will be destroyed among those who are not good. He was not saying be evil. He was saying, understand who you're dealing with before you decide how to act. The psychological truth is this. When you give without limits, people don't feel grateful. They feel entitled. This is not a character flaw in them. It is a pattern in human nature. We calibrate what we expect based on what we've received. If you always give, they always expect. And the moment you stop, they feel wronged. Not because you've done anything wrong. Because you trained them without knowing it. Think about someone who was always available for a friend. Always the one who showed up, gave advice, offered help. Now think about what happened the one time they needed something back. Silence. Because the dynamic was set. One person gives. One person receives. And that was your fault. Not theirs. The strategic rule. Kindness without limits becomes weakness. Give strategically. Give with intention. Give in ways that create mutual respect, not dependency that only flows one direction. And this is where most people destroy themselves. They confuse being used with being loved. They think if they give enough, people will finally value them. But the world doesn't work that way. Respect comes from strength, not sacrifice. Principle 5. Silence is your most dangerous tool. And you never use it. Most people are terrified of silence. They fill it. Constantly. With words, with explanations, with justifications, with noise. And every word they add is a small piece of power they hand over. Machiavelli understood that the most powerful figures in history weren't the loudest. They were the ones who knew when to say nothing. Because silence forces the other person to project. To guess. To fill the gap themselves. And whatever they project into your silence reveals exactly what they fear, what they want, and how much power they've already given you. The psychology is simple. We are deeply uncomfortable with uncertainty. When someone doesn't explain themselves, doesn't react, doesn't fill the silence, we instinctively start trying to understand them. We start analyzing. We start wondering. And that wondering is a form of attention. And sustained attention is a form of power. Here's a real example. Someone says something designed to provoke you. Maybe an insult. Maybe a challenge. Maybe a test. The average person defends immediately. The powerful person looks at them. Says nothing. Then changes the subject entirely. And that response, that non-response, is more devastating than any comeback could ever be. Because it says, you are not worth reacting to. The strategic rule. Use silence as a tool. Not as absence. Not as weakness. As a deliberate signal that says, I am not controlled by your words. Listen closely to this part. Most people give away their entire internal state through their words. Learn to give away nothing. Because what people don't know about you, they can't use against you. Principle 6. People follow strength. Not goodness. Not fairness. Strength. This is the uncomfortable truth that most people spend their whole life trying to disprove, and fail. Think about every person in your life who commands deep, automatic respect. Are they the most generous? The most honest? The most morally consistent? Or are they the ones who carry themselves like their time matters? Like their decisions are final? Like they don't need your agreement to move forward? Machiavelli wrote that people love at their own convenience, but fear at the convenience of the prince. Meaning, loyalty built only on kindness is fragile. Because the moment circumstances change, loyalty dissolves. But respect built on strength, on perceived power, on the belief that you are not easily moved, that holds. Here's the psychological truth. Human beings evolved in social hierarchies. And every hierarchy runs on perceived power. Not on who is morally correct. On who is perceived as strong. This isn't cynical. It's biological. And pretending otherwise doesn't protect you. It just leaves you unprepared. Comment, I see the game now, if you've watched someone weak get ignored while someone powerful gets followed, and only now you understand why. The strategic rule. Stop trying to be liked. Start being respected. These are different currencies. And only one of them actually buys you security. But here's where it gets dangerous. You cannot fake this. People feel the difference between performed strength and real strength instantly. Real strength comes from one place, complete comfort with who you are, what you want, and what you will not accept. Principle 7. Control the frame. Control everything. Here is the final principle. And it ties everything together in a way that will change how you see every conversation, every room, every interaction for the rest of your life. Every social interaction has a frame. A frame is the invisible structure that decides what the interaction is actually about. Who is judging whom? Who is seeking approval? Who is in control? And here is what most people never realize: whoever sets the frame wins. Always. Machiavelli wrote about this concept in terms of territory. He said that a wise prince does not wait for the enemy to define the battlefield. He defines it first. And that principle applies to every conversation you will ever have. When someone comes at you with anger, they're trying to set a frame where you are the defendant. When someone tests your limits, they're trying to set a frame where your limits are negotiable. When someone ignores you, they're trying to set a frame where your attention is worth less than theirs. The strategic rule: never accept someone else's frame. When the frame shifts against you, change the game. Change the subject. Change the dynamic. Walk away. Love. Stay silent. Do anything except play inside a frame designed to make you lose. Think about it. Every argument you've ever lost, you lost it because you accepted the frame the other person set. You played on their terms. On their ground. With their rules. And then you wondered why you couldn't win. The psychological truth is this. Power is not about force. It is about context. He who controls the context controls the conclusion. Now you understand the game. 7 principles. Each one darker than the last. Each one more real than anything you were taught in school, in church, or by people who needed you to stay manageable. This is the line between survivors and victims. Between the people who get used and the people who get respected. Between the person who reacts and the person who decides. From this point forward, ignorance is no longer an excuse. You know what your signals say. You know what your reactions cost. You know what your availability is training people to expect. You know that silence is power, that frames are everything, and that kindness without strategy is not virtue, it is a vulnerability someone else is already using. You will want to rewatch this. Because the first time, you will only understand half of it. The second time, you will start to see it everywhere, in the people around you, in the conversations you've been losing, in the dynamics you've been allowing. Now you see the difference between being respected and being used. The question is not whether this is true. You already know it's true. The question is what you are going to do with it. Declare it publicly. Not for me. For yourself. Type, I choose strategic strength below. Make it real. Because the decision to stop being readable, to stop being exploitable, to stop confusing weakness with goodness, that decision starts right now. Power respects strength. Nothing else.